Blessings, good evening. It's a Tuesday night, so we have a few questions have come in. And we'll see what they are. So, first question. Luang Por, today my aim is adjusting my expectation and having loving kindness for someone I have tremendous difficulties with. How to do this? Well, the Buddha said mindfulness, sati, is the Dhamma that's always helpful in every situation. So if you have someone that you find brings up anger or resentment or other negative qualities in your mind when you're with them, their behavior, their speech, the relationship, well, then you need to practice lots of mindfulness of your speech and your conduct around that person. So to keep loving kindness, metta, in your mind, you need to be mindful. When we lose our mindfulness, then we'll slip into the same old negative reactions, irritation, annoyance, anger. So that's one thing. Maybe set your heart every morning on maintaining goodwill for everyone you meet through your day. And maybe particularly devote some time to a short meditation on, or a longer one if you've got time, but a meditation on goodwill directed particularly to this person who is causing you annoyance. One thing we have to remember is that metta doesn't equate with liking someone. You may like parts or some aspects of that person, some of their behavior, some things about them, but there may be some things you might never like about them. But goodwill is something you generate from your own heart, internally, going outwards. First to yourself as one human being, and then out to others that you meet. And you need to keep coming back to that. So with mindfulness of the object of metta, goodwill, cultivating that thought, that feeling over and over again. Whatever the other person is like. So you're not trying to convince yourself to like them or approve of them or agree with them, but you are keeping your own mind, your aim is to keep your own mind in a wholesome state with metta. And if there's somebody who triggers your anger, well, you need to work harder at it. So you prepare yourself, maybe you know your own weaknesses of speech and action around that person, so you have to be maybe more careful and think it through how to maintain your goodwill while you're with that person. To tolerate them, even if you don't like them. But you have to keep coming back to your own mind, because your mind is where your number one responsibility, your priority is to keep your own mind free from unwholesome mental states, what we call kilesa, mental defilements, such as anger, irritation, resentment, hatred, and so on. That's your number one task. And that will naturally flow out once you're doing that, it'll flow out into your behavior with other people. At least you'll be more tolerant. So if you keep coming back to your goodwill, whatever else they're doing, you keep your own goodwill. But you also have to know your limit, don't you? How much you can cope with. So sometimes we have to get our own time to ourselves, rest and recuperate. Also, you have to manage your expectations, like you say, about how quickly and how much somebody else is going to change or improve. They may not be able to improve very much very quickly, so you have to accept that. Then not to get disappointed when they aren't changing, rather than saying, when are they going to change, when are they going to improve, will they speak to me better and appreciate me more. All the things you may want or expect from the relationship, that may happen, may not, may take time, may not happen at all. So, rather than living with disappointment all the time, come back to your own life, your own actions, your own state of mind, and start there, focus there. And get on with your own practice. And that should have a good effect on the other person over time. But you can't, expect too much. You have to get on with your own practice. You cultivate goodwill for that person, but then you have to let go. And there's a limit to how much you may be able to help them or have a good impact on them. You have to accept that. Life is short. We can't spend all our time trying to please other people or expecting them to improve, change. We have to get on with our own life and improve ourselves, and that will have a good effect on other people, but it may only be subtle. You have to accept that. So we call these people we live with or work with who trigger our anger, we call them our teachers, because they're helping to show us our own attachments. And as you become more mindful, more aware, direct your attention to yourself, you'll see your own mental defilements, your own anger coming up. So they can help you in that sense. So they're helping you to see your own weaknesses. So practice through meditation, cultivating metta in your speech, your actions, but also know your limits, so you're not expecting the impossible, and you get on with your own life and what you have to do, and you see what else you can share with that person, but they also have to practice for themselves, and if they're not practicing, not improving, not changing, well, you have to have some upekkha with your metta and accept that. Next question. When I meditate, I feel empty inside. Is this correct? Depends what you define as feeling empty. As meditation teachers, we often talk about how when the mind is still, when you practice mindfulness continuously, say through meditation, sitting, particularly sitting and walking meditation, and your mental energy unifies, gathers together, you may experience the factors of samadhi arising, so what we call vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata, one-pointedness. When you experience one-pointedness of mind on an object, you let go of everything else. Your senses, your sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, you're ignoring them, gathering your mind internally with a meditation object, such as the breath. And as your mind unifies, your mental energy gathers, you experience these factors of samadhi, you experience stillness, stability of mind, calm. The mind is unperturbed for a while at least. And sometimes we describe that as emptiness. The mind is experiencing emptiness. because the body and the sensations of the body disappear. And memories you've let go of, thoughts about the future you let go of, the mind is just aware in the present moment in a very refined state, maybe merging with its object. So it's just aware of itself. The mind is aware of itself, still. So often we describe that as emptiness. As Ajahn Chah said, it's like a taste of Nibbana. It's not Nibbana, but it's like a taste of letting go of everything and experiencing deep inner peace for a while. So it's a good thing. But then another kind of emptiness is, when you feel there's nothing there. So it could be mixed up with a certain amount of negativity, disappointment, depression, looking at your experience or the experience of the world in a negative light. You may still be meditating, practicing mindfulness on an object. You may be noticing the impermanence of thoughts and feelings, the material world around you, maybe having some insights into not self, letting go of attachment, realizing that nothing belongs to you, you can't keep anything. When you die, you don't take anything with you. But instead of that insight being sustained and being a cause for letting go of attachment, craving and attachment, the mind becomes slightly unhappy with itself and with this insight. It's a sort of not a complete insight, you could say, that doesn't give rise to a piti and sukha, a sense of well-being. It's just kind of seeing everything as pointless. That might be emptiness in the more worldly sense then. You just see life as meaningless or empty. What's the point? What's the point of doing anything when it's all temporary, it's not self? And many meditators experience this. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. You have to ask that question yourself. Is this emptiness coming from stillness and the mind is in a very wholesome, peaceful state, which is a good thing? Or is it more a sense of meaningless and even despair, where you've seen some insight into impermanence, not self perhaps, but then instead of helping to liberate you from attachment, that's given you a new attachment, one of a more negative outlook for a while, and you feel more depressed with the world, or feel like there's no real goal, it's pointless, for example. So you have to investigate that and try to obviously know the difference between these two things, two experiences. And if it's just you feel empty, meaning life seems empty, meaningless, you have to come back to square one in your meditation, come back to your meditation object, bring up mindfulness, say, of the breath, or even come back further than that, reflect on the good things in your life to bring up a sense of well-being. Say, just having the opportunity to practice, the opportunity to hear the teachings, the good that others have done for you, parents, friends, people who've helped you, the good things you've done in your life. You may have kept precepts consciously, lived in a harmless way for long periods of time in your life, maybe hardly done much to hurt anyone. All kinds of good things. You come back to reflect on this, to revitalize, re-energize the mind, bring up more of a sense of well-being. Go back to your meditation, improve your mindfulness, and then try and catch those negative states as they're forming, as your mind is identifying with them and saying, oh, my life is meaningless, it's pointless, what's the point? Catch those kind of mental states and let them go. If it's the more positive, more wholesome kind of emptiness, well, just sustain it as much as you can. Experience the stillness, the emptiness of mind as much as you can. Maintain mindfulness. If you lose your mindfulness, bring it back again, and so on. And keep improving that. But meditators, particularly if they're doing a lot of what we call vipassana, insight meditation, but their samadhi is not very strong, the nourishing, wholesome roots of the practice are not well established, well then they can go into a kind of negativity, feeling like life is meaningless. So you have to watch out for that and employ certain reflections to help bring your mind back to a wholesome state. Another question: why do Buddhist ceremonies begin with taking the 3 refuge and then the 5 precepts? Do we need a monk to give us the precepts? Well, short answer is no, you don't need a monk to give you the 5 precepts. But when we have Buddhist ceremonies, a ceremony is a ritual. It's usually a gathering of a few or many people together for a particular reason, for an event, celebrate a Buddhist event. It could be for making some kind of alms giving, such as a katina or a papa, or some other kind of donation or offering event. Could be some form of sanghadana. It could be on an occasion, like it could be a meditation retreat day, or they say at the beginning of meditation, Buddhist meditation retreats, often we take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, keep precepts, undertake to keep precepts, and so on. There are these occasions where people come together, and ritual ceremonies have a certain value to bring people together, give them something to focus on. It doesn't take very long, it's just a few minutes. You declare your intention to take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, the Buddha. You're reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, taking refuge in those qualities, aspiring to those qualities, and then undertaking the 5 precepts, assuming you see that as a useful guideline for your practice. It's partly out of trust and belief in confidence in the Buddha and his teachings, partly maybe in your own reflection that you've seen, yes, these are good guidelines to follow, and you're just making your commitment to the precepts in that small ritual. And when other people are doing it as well, you get a certain confidence, boosted confidence and energy and faith to keep them for a day and a night maybe. So from time to time these ritual ceremonies can be useful like that. But of course your aim is to go beyond that and establish Buddha Dhamma Sangha as your refuge internally, without having to say anything, without the ritual. Or it's more those qualities and what the Buddha Dhamma Sangha means to you becoming established in your mental activity, the way you think, your outlook, and particularly when the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, you're developing them, and these include the 5 precepts. You're developing them every day until they become part of who you are. So it's just normal for you to not kill, not steal, and so on. To the point where the intention to refrain from those actions, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, malicious speech, taking intoxicants, the intention to refrain from those things is just normal for you. In the very beginning, you may go through a ritual where you take those precepts with a teacher. It could be a lay teacher or a monk or a nun. And that's quite helpful in the beginning because we are new and our mind is shaky, our understanding of the practice is still new and limited perhaps. So you do these rituals to help focus your mind. But as you practice more, it becomes just natural, the way you think, the way you intend your mind, the way you train your mind. And you don't need to necessarily chant or say anything. It just becomes part of your mental and, training in body, speech and mind on a daily basis. That has obviously to be voluntary. You see the value of taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, following the Buddhist teachings. You see value in keeping the 5 precepts as your guideline. And little by little, you have less and less doubt about it, less hesitancy, less skepticism, because you know it's good for you. It's protecting you. We say this: you keep the precepts will look after you. They protect you from making a lot of bad karma, negative karma, from harming others through body and speech. And they're training your mental intention to be wholesome, and you're abandoning the unwholesome. So you're following exactly what the Buddha taught. But in the beginning we take them as a more external exercise, but later on they just become internalized, part of who you are, how you live. And so eventually the aim is, the intention to kill simply doesn't arise. The intention to steal doesn't arise. Your mindfulness, your commitment to the path, your wisdom and understanding, all of these good qualities develop until they're part of your mental makeup. It's just normal. They actually say, one who keeps the 5 precepts, their behavior becomes normal, the normal conduct of a human being. They define humanity, really. We usually look at humanity as, you have a human birth, a human body. You're male, you're female, you have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. You have everything of a human being. That's just the physical part. And that's the manifestation of your past karma, that you've attained a human birth. Arguably better than being born as a slug, cockroach, whatever. Nothing against them. We wish all cockroaches well. But, better to be a human with intelligence and the ability to learn and do many good things that human beings can do. So it's the product, the body is the product of your past karma, but then your mind is not always the mind of a human, isn't it? It can go into extreme emotion, negative emotional states. That's why we try to keep the 5th precept to free us from intoxication, because when you get drunk or intoxicated by something, it becomes much easier to not follow the other precepts. You say and do things which you lose self-control. But the qualities of a human being come from these 5 precepts: not killing, not stealing, and so on. So that's being a true human, meaning human on the inside, mentally, as well as on the outside. That's something we aspire to. Not easy, we make mistakes, we forget ourselves, of course, we all have. But they're guidelines that you keep returning to over and over again until they're established in your heart. And you don't need to necessarily take them in some kind of ritual or ceremony. That's your aim. And the same with Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. The Buddha said, one who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha, one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. You're internalizing all the qualities of the Noble Eightfold Path until they become natural, normal. They're just the normal conditioning process of the mind, ultimately to take us to the unconditioned Nibbana. But before you can reach the unconditioned, you have to get the conditioning process right. So that's why we call it right view, right thought, right livelihood, right action, right speech, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. So it's conditioning the mind to see and realize the Dhamma, and then the mind becomes the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. It's no longer an external refuge, it's just the mind becomes that way. But in the beginning we do need some external supports, so rituals, ceremonies, meditation retreats, all the different things we do. We listen to Dhamma, we practice dana, we do many things which you know, somebody might sit back and say, oh, that's all just external. Well, it is, but it does lead on to the internal, developing the internal qualities of the path. And it's not really separate. Last question. I become anxious when performing in front of crowds, e.g. presentations, chanting, etc. Is there a way that I can minimize the anxiety, especially the effects of anxiety negatively impacting on my performance? Well, we all use language differently, but I would say as a practitioner of the Dhamma, you don't have to perform anything. Performance almost indicates something that's put on, you know, like an actor or a musician or something. But I realize everyone uses language differently, so you may just mean when you're performing or doing certain tasks that involve being in front of other people. I understand that. So, of course, when we're with other people doing something for them or relating to them in some way, we're the center of attention, the focus of attention, then it tends to make us nervous, especially if we're new to whatever it is we're doing. Say, you know, if you're a Buddhist monk chanting, well, often in the beginning your chanting is not yet very good, so you feel a bit uncomfortable because you know you can't do it. So it brings up a sense of self. You know, this is what it is, isn't it? A sense of self, whether you're giving a talk, chanting, and in other walks of life. You know, the first day on a new job, you're going to probably be a bit nervous, whatever that job is, whether you're a gardener, a teacher, buying and selling things, administrating something, you know, whatever job you have, the first day, because you're brand new, you'll tend to have a strong sense of self. Maybe you feel inadequate or shy, or maybe you're a very confident person as well, but you'll be aware that you don't know certain things. You're inexperienced because it's brand new, you're brand new. Whatever walk of life is going to be like that. So the way the awkwardness and the anxiety will fade, one way it fades is just through experience, just doing the thing, whatever it is. You start to become more used to it, more comfortable. And in terms of Buddhist practice, well, you're also reflecting on craving and attachment as the source of suffering, and craving and attachment are to be let go of. So, you know, any suffering associated with presenting to other people, whether it's talk, information, or chanting, or whatever you're doing, your practice of mindfulness is looking, observing your own body and mind in that situation and what's going on, and looking into the sense of self, self-view, conceit that may arise, and just treating that with wisdom as much as you can, reflecting on, with mindfulness, reflecting on what's going on, seeing the temporary nature of experience. You know, you feel anxiety and then it passes. You don't feel anxious all the time. It's a train of thought, it's a feeling, tension, stress, whatever. It arises, passes away. So perhaps in the beginning you simply have to acknowledge it and put up with it patiently. But as you become more mindful of things, you tend to let go. So you're not feeding them or making them worse. You tend to be letting them go, and your overall experience will improve. You'll feel better, more comfortable within yourself. There's other aspects, you know, reflecting on self in terms of presenting to other people, or whether it's teaching or passing on information, whatever. You maybe come back to the skillful, the wholesome aspect of what you're doing, the good intention, and preserve that. You preserve the willingness to learn, from that situation. So if you're teaching others, you're remembering that you're also teaching yourself, and you're learning from that interaction how to do it better. You may have a good intention of kindness, compassion, to share, to help, but that's a skill as well, and you learn through experience how to help or support others or advise others better through the doing of it. So if you're new or beginning, you accept, I'm new, I don't know everything, I'm going to have to learn. And you have that reflection, you have some humility, some acceptance of where you're at, and you understand the uncertainty of it. Over time you can improve and change for the better. Some people go the other extreme, they're overconfident and they think they know it all. And they sit there and tell you, maybe they're a teacher or presenting something and they think they know everything, and maybe they know a lot, but maybe there's still some things they don't know. So the Buddha encourages us to be humble, not conceited, as we chant in the Metta Sutta. Humble, not conceited, not attached to our views and opinions too strongly. We have views and opinions, but not to attach so strongly that it leads you to clash with others, look down on others, or feel inadequate in front of others, and so on. To try and relax and be willing to be open to learn from experience. So as we teach others, we teach ourselves. As we interact with others, we're observing ourselves. So we're always part of the practice. We're not just one individual pushing on a lot of information or something to others, but we're also training, practicing ourselves at the same time. Otherwise we can get lost. So you see people in different walks of life, they come across as conceited, arrogant, egotistical sometimes, and maybe they can do it, but over time you also notice it will lead to some tension, some stress. Some people are the other extreme, full of anxiety, worry, nervous. And it's also a kind of suffering, so I always find the best thing for anxiety is mindfulness of the breath. Come back to the breath. Some people find mindfulness of the Buddha, so recollection of the Buddha, Buddha, the qualities of the Buddha. These are both really good for dealing with anxiety. You come back to the present moment, calm yourself physically, mentally, let go of the anxiety. You see it as temporary, maybe even see it as not self. Just say, it's just a feeling, just a thought. And you practice mindfulness and then you let it go. So in terms of, if you're a Sangha, this is a question from Sangha, you just keep practicing in all situations, all postures, situations. So if you have to talk to other people and you're representing the Sangha, you're in the robes, well, you remember that. That helps you to be mindful. So you keep your precepts, follow the Vinaya, share whatever words of wisdom or compassion that you can. And if you don't know much, that's fine. We all will be in situations where sometimes people ask us questions. You don't know the full answer. I give answers on these Q&A sessions. I don't expect my answers to be perfect. I just give you some help based on my experience, but I'm sure other people also have different angles, different knowledge that they can use as well. There's always more to learn, and a good student of the Buddha is somebody learning from their experience. As soon as you feel you know so much you can't learn anymore, then you're like the pot full of water. That's it, you can't add any more water, so that you can't receive any more Dhamma. So it's actually a sad situation to be in. You can't learn from your experience anymore. You shut off to learning if you think you know everything. So a student of the Buddha is always learning. That's why Ajahn Chah's teaching about uncertainty, it's not sure, it's not certain, is so helpful. Even if you're an experienced meditator, an experienced Dhamma teacher, it's not sure. Or any walk of life, if you think you know a lot, it's not sure. Maybe there'll be some new information that comes to light and you realize what you knew before was not quite right. Ajahn Chah said, you meet an arahant, or someone reputed to be an arahant, it's not sure. You meet a sotapanna, it's not sure. If you become too firm in your beliefs, too fixed in your views, that can be dangerous because then there's no room to learn. So if you keep this reflection, it's not sure, then you can grow and improve all the time, whatever you're doing. If you live with a teacher, like I've lived with some good teachers, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Anand, quite often they'll be unpredictable because they're helping you to see your experience from different angles. So one day they'll say, you can give the Dhamma teaching today. Then you see what that brings up. And then another day they say, don't need to say anything, just sit there quietly. You've got to deal with both. Sometimes teachers are like that. Ajahn Chah is famous for making monks speak when they didn't want to speak, telling them to be quiet when they wanted to speak. Sometimes we do the opposite of what our mind wants to see how our attachments arise from that. To see the ego, the self, the opinions, in both ways. Sometimes we feel bad, inadequate, sometimes we feel very good, very high, superior. It just depends how your mental defilements are manifesting. The idea is to establish mindfulness and reflect on it all as impermanent, as not self. So there are a few answers tonight. I'll leave you with those answers for your reflection.